Então, oi pessoal, sejam bem-vindos a mais um podcast aqui no canal Explodindo Kardec, né? Hoje eu estou aqui com a Antonia Mills, que pesquisa sobre reencarnação. E a primeira pergunta, como você começou a se interessar sobre a pesquisa da reencarnação? O Arthur vai servir como intérprete.
Mrs. Mills, Eric would like to know when and how you started getting interested in the research of or about reincarnation.
Okay. Well, first of all, I began to learn about reincarnation, first of all, from the Beaver Indians in northeastern British Columbia, Canada. We went there in 1964, me and my first husband at Harvard. And we went there and I learned, first of all, that the Beaver Indians take the life of any animal, whether it's a little rabbit or a big moose, so that it will want to come back and feed them again. They have to take the life of the animal with complete respect. And that's the first thing that I learned about reincarnation. And then I learned that they believe, humans also, of course.
Ela disse que que tudo começou com a pesquisa que ela fez com os Beavers, que é uma tribo indígena canadense, né? E que eles acreditam na possibilidade da reencarnação, né? Acreditam que possam voltar, né? À Terra muitas vezes, ter várias existências, e aí possibilitou ela esse início de estudos, inclusive em Harvard, e esse aí foi o ponto de partida. So the Beavers, right? It's Canadian, Aboriginal Canadians.
Canadian First Nation, Indigenous people. Nessa is their own name for themselves.
So they believe that they can have multiple lives on Earth.
Yes. People do, and as I said, I first learned that they take the life of any animals, so we'll want to reincarnate and feed them again.
Right. So they think they can return and live and reincarnate as animals.
They mostly, stay as humans, but the first thing that I learned about reincarnation was that reincarnation is so much a part of their way of seeing the world that for food they are hunters. They hunt and trap and snare animals, but they take the life of any animal so that it will want to reincarnate and feed them again. They have to take it with complete respect so that it will desire to come back and feed them again. Isn't that lovely?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. I mean, how many of the cows that people eat would want to come back and feed them again? I'm not sure.
Yes.
So is Eric just not able to connect?
No. Então, ela estava dizendo que os Beavers acreditam que, uma vez que você alimente o animal, você pode voltar para alimentar esse animal novamente.
Oi, tá travando aqui.
Tá pra gente.
Faz a segunda pergunta. Qual a influência do pesquisador Ian Stevenson na sua pesquisa? Aí, se travar, continua sem mim mesmo, fazendo as perguntas.
Mas vai gravar? Vai continuar gravando? Aí você edita, né?
Sim, eu edito.
Okay, so Mrs. Mills, now Eric would like to know what is the influence of Ian Stevenson on your research about reincarnation?
Ian Stevenson had a huge role in my research about reincarnation. I met him in 1984. He had just come back from studying reincarnation with the Gitxsan First Nation in British Columbia, Canada, and he went out to the anthropology department at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver and asked for the names of anybody who would like to carry on his work. And he was given my name. And so I was given his contact info, and he was given mine. And so we met in Vancouver in 1984. And he asked me if I would be willing to go and continue the reincarnation research with the Gitxsan First Nation, because some of the people that he wanted to interview had been out of town. And I told him that, I hadn't previously known about the way that he did his research, but he described how he carefully studies cases. He gave me a number of his articles, and I was delighted. And I told him I would be very glad to study the Gitxsan reincarnation, but I was going that summer to do a different project with the Beaver Indians, or Daneza, in northeastern BC. And he said, well, I can give you funding so that after you finish the project you're doing with them, you stay and do a reincarnation study with them and then go to the Gitxsan. So I said, fine, I do that. And so I went and did that in the summer of 1984, and it was fascinating to learn about all the cases.
All right. Então, a Mrs. Mills, Antonia Mills, está dizendo que o primeiro contato foi em 83, ano em que o Ian Stevenson esteve no Canadá, British Columbia, e aí um pegou o contato do outro, então conversaram, e o Ian Stevenson a convidou para desenvolver estudos juntos, né? Ela, no primeiro momento, não pôde, estava já num projeto, mas depois ele disse que assim que ela terminasse esse projeto, que ele ia levantar fundos para que eles pudessem trabalhar juntos, e ela ficou maravilhada, né? E daí esteve com ele em Vancouver, no Canadá, e aí, né, tudo começou, e ela disse no início que teve fundamental importância esse contato com o Ian Stevenson em 1983, e posteriormente, em 1984, eles desenvolverem esse trabalho juntos.
Agora, nos fale um pouco sobre a sua pesquisa referente à reencarnação na crença dos indígenas norte-americanos.
Yeah, now Eric would like to know about the research concerning the belief on reincarnation among Canadian, among indigenous in Canada.
Well, I began doing that in the summer of '84, with as I said, the Beaver Indians and the Gitxsan, and I really enjoyed that. It was wonderful. I had been working with the Beaver Indians since 1964, but to find out about all the reincarnation cases was fascinating. It included, we had been adopted in 1964 by an elderly couple of medicine people, and I knew that Sam St. Pierre had passed away, but it was special to learn that he had, well, when I went to one of the reserves where his granddaughter had married to a different community, and she had 3 little children, and the youngest one came and climbed up on my lap, and his mother said, "Look at that, that's Grandpa, that's Sam. He would never climb. He's just like Sam, he's an introvert. He would never climb on the lap of somebody he didn't know." So, I mean, how moving that he recognized me. I didn't mention that in the article that I wrote at all, because I was so moved I didn't ask any questions about how they knew he was Sam come back. But I wrote about all the other reincarnation cases with them, and then also with the Gitxsan. And then after that, I began. I was hired as a result of that research. I was hired by the Gitxsan and Wet'suwet'en to work for them for their land claims court case. And but before I learned that, I had applied for funding from the Social Science and Humanities Research Council of Canada to continue doing research and with the Beaver and the Gitxsan. But then when I learned that I'd already been hired. I learned that I got that funding. I'd already been hired to work with the Wet'suwet'en, so it changed to the beaver. And instead of the beaver, it was the Gitxsan and the Wet'suwet'en. So I began doing research with the Gitxsan and Wet'suwet'en, and then I continued on doing that kind of research for a long time.
Foi fascinante esse contato com os beavers, né, que é essa tribo indígena canadense, que se iniciou o estudo sobre essa comunidade indígena em 1964, mas foi em 84 que ela, pelo que eu percebi, pôde conectar os temas, né, tema da reencarnação com essa tribo indígena, né? E ela contou um caso em que me pareceu que um deles um caso em que uma pessoa teve lembranças, né, de outras vidas, e me pareceu bem interessante. Foi uma experiência realmente bastante boa, né? Essa é a primeira experiência sobre o tema da reencarnação em contato aí com essa tribo indígena canadense. Ok, o Eric está tendo alguns problemas e nós vamos então nós temos aqui as perguntas. Vamos então para a terceira pergunta. Okay, Eric is having problems with connection, so I'm going to ask you the next question. In your opinion, is reincarnation as a hypothesis the most plausible to explain the recollection of past lives?
Definitely. Yes. And, some cultures aren't raised, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist everywhere. It does, but not everyone thinks in those terms. But indigenous people do think in those terms, just as, in India, they think in those terms. And, the Buddhists think in those terms. But, it happens everywhere.
Uhum. Na opinião dela, a reencarnação, sim, é a explicação mais plausível, né? E ela, no entanto, ressalta que, obviamente, não são todos que acreditam na reencarnação, mas ela pode verificar que muitas tribos indígenas, mundo afora, acreditam, os hindus, né? Os indianos, boa parte deles acredita, é uma crença quase que natural entre eles, e confirma, né, que realmente a hipótese, né, a tese da reencarnação é a única que explica mesmo que o porquê das pessoas se lembrarem de vidas passadas. Não tem nenhuma outra, na concepção dela, nenhuma outra tese que explique melhor, a não ser mesmo a possibilidade, né, a reencarnação. Eric. Well, Eric is having problems again. O Eric está tendo problemas novamente. Vamos então para a quinta pergunta. So next question is the method used by Ian Stevenson replicable?
What's the replicable? Can you?
Yeah, it can be used again and again, and it's something that can be used by other people as well, and
Certainly.
And possibly come to the same terms and objectives and results.
Yes. The methods that Ian Stevenson developed for very carefully recording the experiences of young children, there definitely can be used by many people. Typically, what happens is that it's young children who remember their previous life from the time, often when they're born, and they make all kinds of statements, and many of them have birthmarks that relate to injuries on the previous person, et cetera, et cetera. So the methods are very, very applicable anywhere, anytime. It's strange that what happened, people became less aware of reincarnation because though it was part of early Christianity, it was outlawed in, what was it, 553 or 5, some around there, or in the Second Council of Nicaea, sometimes it's called. And after that, it was made so that people who consider themselves Christians weren't allowed to believe in it, which is very strange because Jesus believed in reincarnation. It's even included in the Bible about how he and John the Baptist knew each other in previous lives. But it became kind of outlawed in a lot of, in Christianity in general after that. So Western cultures became less aware of that. That's how things worked. That's how personalities work. That's how people worked.
Sure. Bem, ela inicialmente responde, né, que sim, que o método utilizado pelo Ian Stevenson é replicável, é aplicável ainda, quer dizer, possivelmente qualquer pesquisador chegaria aos mesmos resultados, né? E chama a atenção das lembranças que várias crianças tiveram sobre vidas passadas, em que o pesquisador Ian Stevenson pôde verificar que eram verdadeiras, né? Foi atrás das informações e dos fatos para pudesse comprovar, né, que os relatos eram verdadeiros, e ela depois lamenta, né, que a reencarnação a crença na reencarnação tenha sido proibida dentro do cristianismo. Cita ali o Concílio de Niceia, né, onde houve essa proibição na crença na reencarnação pelos cristãos. Também lembra que a reencarnação está na Bíblia, né, citou aí João Batista, né, a reencarnação de João Batista, essa passagem, e que no mundo ocidental essa crença acabou sendo, digamos assim, combatida, né, e proibida em função desses erros passados, né, dessas proibições, né, o que é uma pena, uma lástima realmente. Eric.
Em qual pergunta você está?
Estou na pergunta número 6, isso, fiz a 5, agora para 6.
Tá, quais as contribuições dos casos que você pesquisou na Índia, especificamente na Índia?
Eric would like to know about the cases you've researched in India. How important are they in this research, in your research?
Well, they're very important too. One of the things that Ian Stevenson wanted to do is find cases that would sort of influence people who weren't used to thinking in terms of reincarnation. I mean, he was a psychiatrist. In general, North American psychiatrists didn't think in those terms whatsoever. But in India, there are a lot more cases where a child says all kinds of things about who they were, and it's the population is so big there. Often it will be a child who's talking about someone that the parents and the family of that child didn't even know existed. Sometimes they live quite a distance away, et cetera. But then you can verify that the statements that the child made do indeed correctly describe the events of someone who you can find out about that did live and in some other place. So that's those are very strong cases because you can't explain it in terms of the parents and the family and the people around the child saying things to the child about somebody about someone that
they didn't even know existed.
As happens in the indigenous cases. The indigenous cases are still strong, but that aspect of there's no possibility of the family having tutored the child or convinced the child in those cases where the child's remembering a life of someone far away, etc. So what happened in India.
Bem, ela fala que foram muito importantes esses relatos de crianças indianas. Ela ressalta que dá a entender, né, que a reencarnação é uma crença bastante natural, comum na Índia, e que talvez algumas pessoas pudessem atrelar essa crença a esses relatos dessas crianças que lembravam de existências passadas. Só que ela ressalta que a existência dessas pessoas, né, que elas se recordam de terem sido no passado, não eram de conhecimento dos pais ou de qualquer pessoa da família. Então, não era algo que pudesse ser transmitido a essas crianças. Ela não teria como ter conhecimento dessas informações, uma vez que os mesmos pais não sabiam, né? Então, esse é o caráter da investigação do Ian Stevenson e dela própria, onde esses relatos batem bastante, né? Os relatos das crianças batem com uns fatos, né? Que eles foram atrás, né? Para que houvesse um cruzamento das informações, e que seria, obviamente, impossível para essas crianças terem esse conhecimento, uma vez que nem mesmo os pais, nem ninguém à volta dessa criança sabia, né, daquilo que ela estava relatando. E ela também ressalta, né, que, embora os relatos dos indígenas canadenses sejam também muito importantes, esses dos indianos, pela riqueza dos detalhes, acabam realmente tendo uma importância maior, né? Muito grande por serem possíveis de serem constatados através de informações adicionais.
Eu me lembro do caso de islâmicas que lembravam ter sido hindus, né? É um caso interessante.
Yeah, Eric is saying that he can remember about the fact that some children from Islam could have recollections about past lives as Indians, as people from India.
Yes, when I was it was wonderful that I got to go back to India a number of different times. Ian Stevenson, hired me to come to the University of Virginia and work in his department, and I got to go back to India a number of times. And so then I began finding that there were cases among the Muslim population as well, and so I studied them as well. Sometimes a Muslim child would remember a former life as a Muslim. Sometimes they would remember a former life as a Hindu, and vice versa. Sometimes a Hindu would even remember life as a Muslim person. So it was very interesting to record those experiences as well.
Sim, ela ressalta que realmente esses casos aconteceram, que ela esteve na Índia várias vezes, pesquisando através da Universidade de Virgínia, e pôde realmente constatar algumas crianças muçulmanas que se lembraram de existências como muçulmanos também, mas também tiveram lembranças de existências como hindus, e que isso realmente foi bastante interessante, ela também achou bastante interessante.
Então, eu queria agradecer a Antônia, ao Arthur. Eu queria pedir desculpa pela minha internet, que às vezes, né? Arthur, eu queria que você agradecesse a Antônia e pedisse as considerações finais.
Yeah, Eric is apologizing for the internet problems, the connection problems.
Right.
He would like to thank you very much for coming here and talk to us. And we'd like to hear from you, your final words about this so important subject, which is reincarnation.
Thank you. I think that reincarnation is an important thing to understand. I think it is a part of the psychology of all people, even when people don't think in those terms. It explains the qualities that people have, etc. So it's very important to understand it, and because it had become sort of outlawed in culture. It's really, really wonderful that Ian Stevenson began this very careful study of it to help people to understand it. And since he's done that, there's much more understanding in Western culture about the fact that reincarnation does take place. And the James Leninger case is a very, very good example. Where it was a case where a young child in the U.S. Was taken by his father to see airplanes, and then he began drawing all kinds of pictures of airplanes and talking about how he had died. The airplane had fallen, and he had died. And his dad, he named the aircraft carrier that he'd been on in World War II and all these kinds of things. And his dad really didn't believe in reincarnation and wanted to show that it was untrue, but he began recording everything that his son said, and then he found out that the name that he gave of another pilot was indeed another person who was on that same aircraft carrier, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so from his father being complete, finding out that everything that his son was saying was very, 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 very valid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess you're also having problems with connection now. Well, okay, but I got much of what you said. Bem, a Mrs. Mills teve problema lá de conexão, então vamos falar o que ela disse até o momento. Bem, ela fala, né, da importância desse tema da reencarnação, novamente volta a lamentar o fato de ter sido proibida no mundo ocidental, né, de ter sido essa tentativa de ser extinta do pensamento ocidental, a crença da reencarnação. Volta a falar da importância dos estudos de Ian Stevenson sobre o tema, né, que isso ajudou o Ocidente a voltar a pensar na reencarnação. No iniciozinho ela fala que a reencarnação ajuda a explicar as nossas qualidades, né, tanto as qualidades positivas quanto as negativas, por que nós somos assim, né, como somos, com as nossas qualidades e as nossas dificuldades, né, em função das nossas existências passadas, e cita um caso interessante de um relato de um garoto que lembra ter sido piloto de avião e lembra da morte, como foi a morte, em que ele cai, né, com o avião, ele relata como foi essa queda, e inclusive dá detalhes sobre o modelo do avião, como era a forma de pilotar, para o pai, né? O pai começa a pegar essas informações do filho, essas lembranças do filho. Ele, a princípio, obviamente, não acredita, mas são tão ricas em detalhes em que ficou muito claro nesse relato que a criança tinha passado por aquilo, né, tal a riqueza de detalhes que jamais aquela criança teria conseguido obter, senão como uma lembrança de uma vida passada, de uma existência passada.
Então é isso, pessoal. Nos vemos no próximo vídeo, no próximo podcast. Quem está ouvindo aí, se inscreva, curta, compartilha. E é isso. Eu acho que esse trabalho vai enriquecer bastante os brasileiros que ainda não conhecem tanto o trabalho da Antonia. E isso vai ajudar bastante. Então é isso. Até a próxima.
Eric, so I would like to thank you again, Mrs. Mills. Eric is saying about the importance of your interview, right, to us spiritists, Brazilian spiritists, and we do believe in reincarnation. This is a fact for us, right? And thank you very much for being here with us.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. I'm sorry we don't have longer to speak. Let's see. This is Gitsan, young boy who's 4 years old, who had a really clear memories of his previous life. It's very impressive. There are lots of interesting cases all over the world, of course. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much.
You're very
Ela
welcome.
mostrou ali um livro, né, Antropologia ao Humanismo, em que ele, um menino de 4 anos, né, teve lembranças realmente incríveis, né? Então, aquele trabalho ali relata esse caso dessa criança de 4 anos. Então, a senhora Mills agradece também a oportunidade, né, de ter participado aqui com a gente. E, então, a gente dá por encerrado, né, Eric, esse nosso podcast.